What's up, Hockey Nation? I'm Dan Green, and welcome to the Hat Trick show of Flyer and Ice, brought to you by Heat Ratio Sports, our dinner edition. And if we had some technical difficulties, I apologize. My first time producing the show myself. Tonight, we have three interesting games to catch up on, preview tonight's game against the Bruins, discuss some league-wide play, make some predictions, and we're going to introduce a new segment called the Penalty Box. Time permitting, I'll share my DFS lineup as well. Once again, with me, as always, is Vance Crew. Good evening, Vance. How was your week, buddy?
Dan. Hey, guys. Welcome back. Good to see you again.
Did you have a good week?
Had a great week. How about you?
You know what? This teaching thing is fun, but I'm forced to be outdoors because I don't have my facilities, so it's kind of cold out there, but we're surviving. Put it this way, I'm glad to be doing this. It's my outlet, as I'm sure it is for you as well.
Same
All right,
here.
let's jump right to it. So game 2 and 3, the Flyers played extremely sloppy, in my opinion. Too many unforced giveaways. Game 2, Hart, I think, saved the day. He played great. Game 3, they were embarrassed by Buffalo, 6-1. Game 4, despite the 3-0 victory, they were grossly outshot and outplayed again, in my opinion. Obviously, they tightened up things a bit, but they still look off to me. If it wasn't for Elliott, who knows what the outcome would have been. Outshot in every game, Vance. This is a pattern to me. Do you have concerns?
I do have some concerns, but again, also remember that they've only played 4 games. There's some things that are encouraging. Travis Konechny's playing really well as Kevin Hayes. Right now, they currently rank 9th on the power play. So that's all the positive stuff. Of course, the negative, the injuries to Couturier, Frost, and also Myers, being outshot at a clip of get 24 shots a game to 36 a game, 73% on the penalty kill. It's a great thing that they're 3-1 right now, because playing like that, it's not sustainable. You're not going to win very many games playing that way.
It's fool's gold, right?
It is indeed.
So part of the title of our show tonight was "Are the Flyers for Real?" And they have to tighten things up. And ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't figured it out already, I'm more the glass half empty kind of guy, and clearly Vance is the glass is half full. So that's good. A little yin and yang. Another concern we both had is their lack of physicality. One way to change the momentum is physical play. Now, if the Islanders were playing and things were stale, the Clutterbuck, Martin, Cizikas line is out, and they just bang people around like a pinball machine. The Flyers did nothing to try to jumpstart themselves in that 6-1 loss, and that really bothered me. They did take the body more in their 3-0 win, but it still didn't seem overly noticeable. And ironically, the stats said that they out-hit Buffalo 38-17. But again, I didn't really notice it. One hit by Rasmus Ristolainen stands out. A hit by Lawton in the corner, not so much. And we chatted during the week, and I was just playing around, and I couldn't believe that, Mark Borbiaski was available in the offseason. He's a defenseman that's a big hitter. He was the assistant captain for years. He's a team leader type, solid defenseman. He signed with Nashville for 2 years, $4 million total. We signed Gustafsson to a 1-year, $3 million contract. Borbiaski was available. Chara, 1 year, $795,000 to Washington. I think we really needed that physical defenseman. And essentially, we got a Shane Gostisbehere clone in Gustafsson. What are your thoughts on that?
Agreed. Well, right now, where I think they sit, I think at some point they're really going to have to go out and get a top 4 defenseman before the season's over and before it's all said and done. This group that they have right now, I just don't think that they're physical enough.
No.
And, down the line, like we talked about last week, especially with these games being back-to-back and every other night and travel and COVID, guys are going to get hurt. Guys might potentially get sick. You're going to need reinforcements. And the group as a whole right now, defensively, they're just not good enough on the back end.
No, the battle of attrition has already started, as you mentioned, with Myers being out. So it is concerning, and I do think they will make a move. And I guess the good news is they have the assets to do it, which we'll touch on later. The other thing I just want to ask you, point blank, do the Flyers look slow to you? Again, in all the games, you could argue they were outplayed despite the 3-1 record. And part of being outshot, in my opinion, is the other team having more jump and team speed. Thoughts on that?
They do look a little slower than the other teams. That was also an issue in the playoffs last year. So that might be something that has to be addressed as the year has gone on. But again, I don't want to overreact. I think this is a very solid team from top to bottom. I think my main concern with them is physicality and turnovers, just not getting the puck out of the zone. They had a sequence last game where I think they turned the puck over 3 times in a row.
Oh, that was the I believe the 6-1 loss, right? With Jack Eichel's line on the ice. It was like totally unforced. It was like you and I could have gotten the puck out of the zone. It was ridiculous, and hard. Yeah. It was ridiculous. That I think we were texting back. I think I texted to you. I can't take this any longer. Yeah. Again, glass half empty, glass half full. So they've got to clean it up. And obviously when you have even though it wasn't the prettiest 3-0 victory, Elliott was amazing. They obviously cleaned some stuff up, but still more needs to be done. Are there any players starting to concern you? For me, and you just kind of referenced it, the whole D is sloppy with the puck. That's my biggest concern. Haig and Gustafsson in particular. They are turnover machines. There was a play that Haig had the puck behind the net, no pressure whatsoever. He was on his backhand, didn't even look up, and he just rocketed a backhand down the ice for non-necessary icing. And that's the kind of stuff I can't stand. That's what the Luke Shens of the world used to do. Braden Coburn used to do that. All the time in the world in your own, and you just rocket it up the boards without skidding the puck out, without making a good exit pass. I can't tolerate that. So those two are frustrating me. And the positive guys, as you mentioned, TK and Kevin Hayes, have been outstanding in my opinion.
Agreed. As well as Farabee, I thought he's played well as well.
Slow down a little bit. And it's a shame with Frost because I was almost confidently predicting that he would play himself into the lineup and give the Flyers a tough decision to make when Couturier was healthy. But the kid, unfortunately, doesn't get a chance because he himself is now hurt as well. So, as you know, we'll see the depth that they do have because they're going to need it. And that's part of the problem with Couturier being out is the overall sloppiness in defensive play.
Right.
So I'm sure you would agree on all those rules.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention, Dan, and this can't be, we can't drive this home enough. Losing Couturier is a big deal.
It's huge, yeah.
In my opinion, he's the linchpin that kind of holds everything together. He's your number 2 center most of the time on the power play. He's on your first unit on the penalty kill. So when I see poor penalty kill numbers, when I see them simultaneously, as soon as he went out of that game, they started to struggle defensively. Yeah. So I think when you take him out of the lineup and you have to move Giroux back to center and move someone else to the wing, automatically, you lose a lot that way.
And you lose a top 10 faceoff man in the league. And you know how I feel about winning the faceoff percentage for each game. It generally can lead to a victory. And he is, they have Giroux and him on it late in every game because the inevitable nonsense with the official tossing guys out of the circle. You have 2 experts in there, and you lost one of the best. So you're right. You can't minimize his loss enough. The other thing that surprised me a little bit, and I'm not going to go glass half empty on Vigneault. I love the man as a coach. I just love when he speaks. There's nothing about him I don't like. So I'm not going to go negative a coach here. But I was surprised in the Buffalo game that he did not utilize a timeout and go crazy on the bench. They got buried fast, and a goalie change midway through the second period was not enough. I was really shocked when the floodgates were opening. He didn't call timeout and just chew into them. What are your thoughts on that? Were you surprised there wasn't a strategic timeout used?
No, not necessarily. I think, like I said, it's only 4 games into the season. I think Vigneault, he knows the down and distance. He understands that the season is a little bit different. I also believe that this team they've shown that they're resilient under him. You've seen that in the last year and a half. whenever they have a bad game, they normally bounce back. I think that's something that you'll see down the line. If they continue to play poorly for a stretch, I think you might see him call that timeout. But as of right now, I think he did the right thing by letting them play. We're only 4 games in, and I don't think it's time to panic.
Yeah, and for all we know, he was just giving it to him behind the bench throughout the game anyway, which I'm sure he was. So, but yeah, I rekindle the moments of Peter Laviolette back in the day where he just used those timeouts and boom, it just turned the momentum of the game around. The Boston series of 2010 comes to mind. Obviously this is, like you said, game 3 and 4. You can't be over dramatic, but I was surprised. We agree to disagree on that one, but not a big deal. Game 2 in the Buffalo game, again, they were sloppy. They had 12 giveaways. They were outshot 40-30, and we blocked 16 shots, Vance. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. So we were outshot by 10, and we blocked 16 more shots. So think of all the peppering that was going our way. That's how outplayed we were in that 3-0 victory. Again, my cause for concern. So again, if it wasn't for Elliott, we are an unorthodox 3-1. And I jokingly say this. I'm the sage of the show, right? I predicted 3-1. You said 2-2. And I'm not saying, you were wrong, because if anything, we were both wrong. We didn't see them being 3-1 in this fashion. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So, we're rehashing a few of the same points, but I had to drive home that, we're 3-1, which is the start I was hoping for, which I kind of predicted, but not in this fashion. So it's funny. And I guess resiliency, you mentioned it, right?
Right. And that's the mark of a really good team, Dan.
Yeah.
It's the mark of a really good team. I mean, they haven't played their best hockey, and they're 3-1. There's a lot to complain about, but, when you consider the circumstances with the injuries they've had, 3-1 is a good place to be.
No, you're right. And if this was Dave Hackstall's team, they'd be 0-4, 1-3 at best. We'd be hearing the cliches. We got to get off to a better start. At least now we're hearing that they're 3-1, but they're not happy with their play. So they're not. Right. They're actually being hard on themselves with a positive record. So yeah, it can only get better. Just elaborate more your thoughts on the power play. Share with the viewers the overall stats that they have NHL wide, because that is something that's encouraging, I guess.
Right now they're 25%, which is good for 9th in the NHL, which is really good. It doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like they've had a great amount of success on the power play because they did most of their damage in that first game, but they've been pretty consistent with it.
No, and in the early stages of the season, you're going to have a game where you have multiple goals and you have a game where you don't have any, and then it evens out in the long run. So tonight we're going up against a Bruins team that they're having trouble scoring, Vance. I don't know if you've checked their box scores. They've only scored 3 regulation goals in 3 games. 1 win, essentially 2 losses, but you get the point for a tie. So they're 1-1-1 with only 3 regulation goals. On the other side, they've only given up 4 regulation goals. So they're solid defensively. So you had mentioned this, and I give you complete credit that you weren't necessarily, you said they have a lot of new faces and you're not completely sold on the Bruins as being one of the 4 teams to get out. And you could see them being one of the teams that slip up and maybe let someone else get in. So good call on that. You're the sage on that one. So for tonight's show, for tonight's game, I almost have to predict a 2-1, 3-2 type of game. Is that the route you're going? We have to buckle up defensively. We have to continue focusing on team defense. And that's a team that clearly is having trouble scoring goals unless we give them an opportunity with sloppy play. So I'm thinking we're going to try to keep the ship tight and a 2-1, 3-2 kind of game. What are your thoughts?
I agree. As Tuukka Rask, David Pastrnak, David Krejci, as long as you have those guys on your team, you're going to be competitive. And I did not pick them to make the playoffs, but by no means do I mean that they're not a good team. I think they'll bounce back. I think the Flyers will have a tough game tonight. But again, I think it's a game the Flyers should win. Yeah.
Both teams are well rested. So we should come out with a win. And is this the game where we play one and then we bounce and play two against another opponent? I'm drawing a blank because they're mostly consecutive games with the same team with a single game, and I wasn't sure if this was a back-to-back with Boston or not.
Let me take a look and see. I thought it was back to back.
Okay, no, you could be right. I looked at the schedule so much, I'm almost blending in future dates in my head.
It's
so
back to back. They play on Saturday night.
Okay, and then who do they have after Boston?
They play the Devils after Boston.
All right. So let's so we've got the Flyers covered to some extent. We've talked about their sloppy play, being outshot, the need to tighten things up, the resiliency to have played so poorly and be up 3-1 in the season so far. So that's all good. We know we have a team tonight that's defensive minded, that is having trouble scoring goals. So we project a low scoring affair. But let's quickly touch a little bit on the NHL. Are there any surprise or stand-up players for you thus far? I'll give you mine. Look, all the obvious choices are up there. Austin Matthews is playing great. Nylander's playing great. McDavid had a hat trick the other night. So all the top names are doing well. A guy for me that is standing out is Jeff Petry of the Canadiens.
He's a good player.
He is, but if you think about his career, the past 3 years he's been a double-digit goal scorer. He was a journeyman defenseman for years, and just the past 3-4 years he's scored 10, 13, 12 goals, and he's off to a flying start. That's an interesting trajectory he's had in his career, and I give the guy credit. He's 33 years old, so he started becoming a hell of a hockey player late in his 20s. So I give a guy like that credit for stick-to-itiveness, and now he's a preeminent defenseman. So I'm giving him a standout for the season thus far, but I want to applaud him for just a hell of a turnaround to a career. So Jeff Petry is he's an interesting a very nice story. TK, obviously, if this was a national show, which in theory it is, but we're locally based, you'd have to be talking about Travis Konechny. It almost seemed it was a karma thing. He told the scorer that it was the puck grazed off of Oscar Lindblom's head, gave Oscar credit for the goal. Next game he scores a hat trick. The following game he scores another goal. So the guy's on fire, and that's the kind of player he is. When he's on, he's just it comes in bunches. It's like a golfer that gets birdies in bunches. So TK's on fire. And I'll go a player that isn't necessarily going in the right direction as far as a great start is Carey Price. He's been up and down this year. He was brilliant the other night against Edmonton, stopping 33 shots in a 5-1 victory, but he's been pulled in 2 other games, and he's got a terrible save percentage below 89%. And for me, I cringe if you're under, 91% in the save percentage. I want to see like almost 92% and above. So those are my quick hitters in the NHL for having a nice start and somewhat disappointing. How about yourself?
I think Mark Stone is playing really well for
Correct,
Vegas.
yeah.
7 points so far. Always been a great goal scorer. Vegas hasn't lost a game yet, I believe. Also, the Kirill Kipersov kid, you told me about him. You mentioned him, and I watched some video of him. He looks great for the Minnesota Wild. So he's been a surprise to me, and I believe he's the odds-on favorite to win the Calder.
Yeah, and that's I'll give a little hint. That's we're going to be discussing our we're going to give, since it's only show 3 of our tenure, I was going to do a predictions for the offseason awards, and that's my Calder nominee. So I'll give that secret away right now. Yeah, so he's been brilliant. He's an exciting player, and again he's a rookie that's benefiting from being experienced. He's not a 19, 20-year-old kid. I believe he's 23. He was drafted, I think, in the 16 or 17 draft. So he's got some seasoning. So that helps. One day we're gonna have a player on this show, and I would just love to talk to a player about their 19-year-old them versus their 23-year-old them of today. If they could look back and go, my God, I can't believe I survived an NHL season as a 19-year-old. You just imagine the mass and muscle they put on. Sanheim, Farabee put on 12 pounds in the offseason. So they become men.
Right.
They come in as boys and they become men a few years later. So that's where Kipersov is benefiting. He's a little older than Lafreniere and company.
Right. And I might add, that's one of the things that I've enjoyed about watching hockey over the years. I started watching it really young, and you literally watch these guys grow up right in front of you. And that's why so many fans, are attached to hockey players more so than any other team.
Yeah, that is a terrific point. You get to keep the players a little longer. The NBA to some extent too. They're coming up as one and dones in college, but the NHL guys and the hockey players have that reputation of just being more down to earth athletes, more relatable athletes. So that is definitely a great point, Vance. So I want to tie into the NHL as a whole with, I watched the Columbus game the other night.
Okay.
And I was really surprised to hear that Pierre-Luc Dubois is demanding a trade after just signing a 2-year, $10 million contract a few months ago. They really wouldn't elaborate. Obviously him and his coach Tortorella are butting heads, but he wants out. And now you can literally type a teams. You could type in Rangers interest in Pierre-Luc Dubois, Flyers interest in, and every journalist has a justification or an angle that he might come to your team. What are your interests in him as a player joining the Flyers?
I think he's a great young forward. I'm not exactly sure. I know he had a really good season last year. Not exactly sure how much he will cost. But again, the Flyers have taken so much time to build up this farm system. They're just starting to see the fruits of their labor. They brought up Farabee, Konechny's up. You've got guys like York and Brent coming over the next few years. You would have to believe that a talent like that is going to cost you, a few of those prospects. Is it worth it? Does it get you closer to winning the Stanley Cup this year? That's what you have to weigh when you make a decision like that. For myself, I think he's a great young talent. I'd rather just keep, the young players that we have and continue to build with them moving forward.
No, Dave, you do bring up a good point. The Flyers are strapped this year. So any trade, they would have to try to get rid of JVR in the deal, in my opinion. And you have to give up some of these assets that you just referenced. And I'm willing to do it because he's only 23 years old. And he's somewhat physical. He's not a power forward per se, but he's fast. He's skilled. I would seriously look into this. They have the assets. You're right, Dave. They cannot do it unless they are able to pawn off someone like JVR. So Dave's spot on with that. Thank you, Dave, for chiming in. I appreciate that. So I just wanted to share that. If you're not familiar with Dubois, you look him up. He's a really talented player, and he would be a great addition to this team. And it would be scary if another team added him, one of our rivals. So that's, it's almost like add him to block him from going somewhere else. And we have the assets to do it, but we have to unload salary as well. All right. So
but this is what,
go ahead. I'm sorry, Vance.
This is what we were talking about the other day. I just kind of feel like, where we are right now, like I said, we've been steadfast with holding on to our young players and developing from within. And our window is really big right now. And you would have to give up, quite a few prospects to get a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois. So I say, continue to stick with your homegrown products. You've got a few more on the way that are really going to come in and help the team. And, once some of these contracts start to fall off the books over the next few years, then that's when you look to add that sniper. But for now, I think we should be focused on, making small tweaks to the lineup and bringing in veterans that could potentially help us. That's where I believe we are right now.
No, I totally get that. But as they say, you got to kick the tires, eh? And that's what I would do. I would kick the tires. And sometimes when you've got something that's open, you almost have leverage to some extent.
Mhm.
You could play. Some teams play that angle. Like maybe Columbus has lost their leverage because of this now known animosity that's developing. And he's 2 years, 10 million. So you'd have him under control for 2 years, and 5 million per for a player like that isn't outrageous. But yeah,
Didn't he
I
sign
agree.
that deal
I
before,
agree. You don't want to give up the farm per se. I get it.
did he
You were
sign that
saying,
deal
Vance?
before the season? I
No,
said,
he
did he
signed it
sign
in
that deal
December.
before?
December.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's a crazy. It's crazy. I don't know. I don't know what happened. They really didn't elaborate on it, so that was interesting. So moving on, we went over our Stanley Cup predictions. I think I went Tampa Bay, Vegas with Tampa Bay winning it all. I think you went Tampa Bay, Colorado with Tampa Bay winning it all.
I did. Yep.
So let's do our postseason awards. And I swear on my children, for the Hart Award, I picked Connor McDavid before his hat trick. I promise. I do my notes, my plotting for this show in advance. I work. I'm busy, and I had McDavid as my Hart winner. I have my Norris. Now this is probably not going to happen, but I love the kid. I love Cale Makar of Colorado, so I'm putting him as my Norris Trophy winner, best defenseman. And another kid I love is Jacob Chikrin. So I hope he gets some consideration. I think he's a beast, and he's the son of a former Flyer, Jeff Chikrin. My time. Do you remember Jeff Chikrin, Vance?
I had the hockey card back in the day.
Well, yeah. Well, I watched them come into the league, and I watched them exit the league. So that's how far back I go. For Calder, you nailed my guy earlier as a player that's pleasing you in the league, and that's Kirill Kipersov. He's tremendous with Minnesota. Regarding goalies for the Vezina, goalies, this is interesting. You have your bell cow goalies that those are the ones that are going to win the Vezina, and then you got guys like Lerner and Marc-Andre Fleury that are sharing time that just won't be a part of the equation. So for Vezina, you have to go with someone that is going to get a bulk of the game. So I'm going for my Vezina Trophy winners, top goalie Jacob Markstrom of the Flames. He's tremendous, and my Art Ross will be McDavid for most points. I think by year's end he will have the most points. And the Selke Award, which should be renamed, in my opinion, Vance, to the Bergeron Award, will go to Patrice Bergeron, a 4-time winner who I think will be a 5-time winner, and he will lobby for the award to be named after him. So who are your guys that you see as taking home some trophies at the end of the year?
So for my Vezina, I have Vasilevsky. I think with that defense playing in front of him, he's always going to be a favorite.
He's a wall.
Yeah, he is. He's a huge dude. What is he, like 6'5" or something like that?
Yeah, he's agile. He's tremendous. That's a great pick.
So sticking with Tampa Bay for the Norris Trophy, I'm going to stick with Victor Hedman. I think we talked about that before. He's another wall, great skater, just an overall great player. Normally, when you win the Selke, you normally keep it for a little while. And Couturier he just won his first, so I'm going to stick with Couturier for the Selke. For the Hart, I have Connor McDavid, and for the Art Ross, I have Draisaitl.
Okay, yeah, Draisaitl finally got off the schneid the other night, and it's funny we talked about that about players. We were happy for Patrick and JVR, who had rough seasons, one injury, one for just not living up to expectations. It's important to get a fast start. Comeback player of the year. All right, Dave. That's great. We'll address that. That's a great question. Dave, type your selection for us.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah. So real fast though, Jack Eichel was flying around the ice, and he's got his share of assists, but he's squeezing this. He hasn't scored a goal yet, and it doesn't it seem like every year Giroux starts off without getting on the board. So you hate to see these guys without the fast starts because it has to build tension.
Hey, by the way, can we do Dave? What do you think about Stamkos for comeback player of the year?
Yeah, that's slam dunk if he stays healthy.
Let us know what you think about that one, Dave.
Yeah, I think Dave was putting down one on a tee for us, to be honest with you. Yeah, Bobby Ryan. We'll see.
Bobby Ryan's for Detroit, right?
Bobby Ryan has to keep it going because he's been an underachiever. But yeah, we'll see. I was watching him play. He played. It was Colorado.
Bobby Ryan was with the Senators last, I believe.
Right.
And now I believe did he play with Detroit this off season?
Yeah, with Detroit. Detroit. Yeah, I was watching the Detroit game the other night. Yeah, he was on Detroit. He was a guy that I was hoping would land here a few years back because he spent some time at Cherry Hill. Yeah. So, and he's a power forward. So I always wish that kid well, but he kind of fell off the radar. But yeah, if Stamkos stays healthy, he's just going to fall out of bed and score 30 goals this year.
Agreed.
So we're adding a new segment starting tonight that we're going to call the penalty box. We're going to think outside the box in the penalty box. So the penalty box for me is we're going to talk almost things that aren't current NHL. We're going to talk about yesteryear moments, interesting moments from the past. And our first topic in the penalty box is going to be the huge Eric Lindros trade that brought him to the Flyers when he was drafted by the Quebec Nordiques in 91 and refused to sign with them. And then you had that unbelievable trade a year later where the Flyers put a monster package in, and then the Rangers put a monster package in, and Marcel Aubut reneged on the Flyers, and the Rangers weren't even aware that he reneged on the Flyers, and it was crazy. And I have all the details of all the players that were involved, and we're basically going to discuss the what if factor if that trade never took place, if the Rangers had gotten him. So that was in. The trade was 1992. He was drafted in 91, and he sat out the entire year. He stuck to his guns. He refused to play. He was a man-child playing an extra year in juniors. He played for Team Canada with the NHL players and was a force. So we're going to revisit the Eric Lindros trade. So here are some of my questions to you, Vance. What if we did not make that trade? What could we have done better once the trade was made? What if Lindros knew a couple years later that the Nordiques would relocate to Colorado? Would he have bitten the bullet and stayed with that franchise? So these are some of the questions I want to address. Hindsight's always 2020. Mm-hmm. A lot of people watching this show, yourself included, perhaps, you were in your elementary to young teen years, your influential years, and a guy like Eric Lindros brought you to hockey. He was the Tiger Woods of the Delaware Valley to bring young kids to watching hockey. So I bet you a lot of your generation and younger would be like, hell yeah, it was worth it. He was phenomenal, and he was. But knowing what you know now, would you have made that trade?
Man, that's a really tough question.
Adam, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Adam, how's it going? Welcome to the show. That's a really tough question. Knowing what I know now, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, but I would almost have to say no. I mean, if you're asking me knowing what I know now, the concussions and the time missed, and knowing what Forsberg turned out to be, and the Flyers basically in that trade gave up a foundation piece to a multiple cup winning team. And, hindsight being 2020, I think if they knew that, they may have stayed the course with the team that they had and kept Forsberg.
No, you're absolutely right. I would not have made the trade. You can't, knowing what you now know. And the whole sad thing of the Lindros saga was the animosity towards the end with management. And he was right. He was in the right. Yeah, his parents were too involved, but the guy had a collapsed lung. He had multiple concussions, and Bobby Clark just wanted him back in the lineup within weeks of these injuries. Whereas a few years later, Primo misses a year. Crosby takes a year off. Pronger retires from a concussion. And Bobby Clark made no reference to them being soft, them not earning their paycheck, meddling parents. So Lindros, if he was given the opportunity to rest and really get healthy, he could have perhaps sustained some time with the Flyers, and maybe things would have been different. The thing, though, is if they had kept Forsberg, as you referenced, and all the many pieces that they gave up, they still could have acquired a John LeClair, right, and done some magical things. I am going to share with you all the players we gave up for Lindros, not just Forsberg, and then I'm going to make an assertion that I'd like to see if Dave and Adam and Phil agree with me on this, and obviously you as well, Vance, and all the other viewers. So here's what we gave up for Lindros. We gave up Hextall, and at the time Hextall he wasn't the Hextall that he used to be. We gave up Steve Duchesne, who was an offensive defenseman who had defensive liabilities. We gave up Mike Ricci, who was the wrong person we drafted a year earlier. Kerry Huffman, another modest but solid defenseman. Peter Forsberg. We gave up 2 first-round draft picks, one of which they flipped into Adam Deadmarsh, who was a multiple 20 and at one time a 30-goal scorer for them. $15 million. And the future consideration was a hell of a power forward who had some nice years in the NHL, and Chris Simon. That's who we gave up for Eric Lindros. So imagine a team that I honestly I don't care about Duchesne, Ricci, Huffman, or Hextall, to be honest with you. Obviously, Forsberg, I was upset to see Simon go because I knew about him in the minors at the time, and the draft capital. So I wanted Lindros at the time because we didn't know what Forsberg was, but that's who we gave up. Now, this is who the Rangers offered, and now this is why I know Marcel Aubut and perhaps Pierre Pagé, who probably got in his ear, take the Rangers package. Listen to this package, fans. I'm not sure if you knew who the Rangers offered, but here's who they offered. They offered Sergei Nemchimov, Tony Amonte, who was still young and in his prime, Alexei Kovalev, who was a tremendous hockey player. He bounced around, but he had so much skill. James Patrick, an aging defenseman. He would have been the not a big deal kind of player. And either Van Beesbrook or Mike Richter, their choice as a goalie in the trade, as well as multiple first-round draft picks and $20 million cash.
That's a great package.
So if you're Pierre Pagé, who was the GM at the time, and the owner, Marcel Aubut, who obviously knows hockey as well as being the owner, would you have reneged on the Flyers' offer after hearing what the Rangers threw at him?
I don't know. I mean, that Flyers offer was pretty good too, though.
It was essentially Forsberg and Simon, but I mean, you had Amonte in his prime. Nemchimov and Kovalev were tremendous forwards, and if you could have gotten a Mike Richter in his prime, he was an elite goalie for many years. So
Richter and Van Beesbrook at that time were both.
Yeah, but Van Beesbrook at least was a little older. He was he was still productive, but he was older. Richter, won them the cup in '94. So it was interesting.
I mean, well, you can make the argument that not making that trade might have won the Rangers the cup.
Maybe. Yeah, you're right. Right. That's exactly correct. The Rangers, right. If the Rangers would have probably had the same scenario that we would have had, a couple years of building around Lindros till they got good.
You want to answer Adam's question?
So you think if they didn't do the trade, he would have won with Colorado? Absolutely. Because Colorado still had, well, they they wouldn't have built up all the extra draft capital like the Deadmarsh type players, but they still had Sakic in the system. And they still had Adam Foote in the system. They had Matt Sundin that maybe they wouldn't have traded him for Wendell Clark. So that they had some pieces. They had Owen Nolan that they drafted a year earlier. So they had the pieces. So I think so. Let me hit Dave up here. Him going to the Rangers would have made the Flyers better. No, yep. No, Dave, that's exactly what we're talking about, because you gutted your team for down the road. And I want to throw this at the viewers. This is my other theory. And tell me, I really want everyone to jump in on this. I have been a firm believer the year before the 1990 draft, actually the same draft that produced Owen Nolan, Keith Primo, Peter Nedved, was the year the Flyers chose Mike Ricci, number 4. Nolan, Nedved, and then Primo were the first 3. We chose Ricci with Jagr on the board. And that I remember I watched that draft. Oh, he doesn't speak English well. The Flyers don't have European players to groom him. I believe Straka, the older Straka, was on the Penguins at the time. And we took your typical grinder, just a mediocre hockey player in Mike Ricci. He's the kind of guy you need to fill a roster out and the kind of guy that helps you win, but not the 4th overall pick in a draft. But here's my contention. I'm sorry, Vance. Go ahead.
No, so he was a typical Flyer.
Yeah.
Player.
But yeah, not overly fast, just a 15, 20 goal scorer at best. So yeah, that was I was dying when they made that pick. But here's my contention, everyone. I firmly believe if we drafted Jagr, he wouldn't have played with us as a 19-year-old like he did with Pittsburgh. We tend to baby our players, and if he did, he wouldn't have had the impact because he didn't have Lemieux on the team, and we were a bad team in the late 90s. I contend if we had drafted Jagr and Forsberg would have been part of that package to send for Lindros. I guarantee that would have happened. So am I right, callers or viewers? We have Jagr in our minor league system. Maybe he plays a few games as a 19-year-old. He's up and down. We draft Forsberg the next year. The great legendary Lindros becomes available. Is it a deal breaker if we don't throw Jagr in the trade with Forsberg? I contend that's how it would have played out. Perhaps they would have said no, and that's what would have landed Lindros to the Rangers. I'm just curious on your take on that, Vance. I'm steadfast in my belief with that.
I don't know. Jagr was a great. I mean, I know he played with Lemieux right out of the gate, but Jagr was a great player early in his career, and it was evident. So, I don't know. I could imagine that would be something that Quebec would have asked for. And maybe that might have been enough for the Flyers not to make the trade. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. That's the beauty of the penalty box. We're just trying to play games here and see what would have happened.
I mean, if they
I'm also
Jagr,
curious. Go ahead. They drafted Jagr. Yeah. Could you imagine if they drafted Jagr and Forsberg and then kept them both? Now let's think along that. Right. That's the other angle with this. You don't make that if you made the right hockey move and you drafted Jagr. And again, I contend he wouldn't have played initially, and I also contend he wouldn't have had the monster rookie year that he had with the Penguins because he played with Lemieux. It was just a great team. But that's a dream lineup. Could you, if they only did the right thing? And listen, I'm sure there's people like us in Chicago and Buffalo that they probably have their versions of something like this. If we only drafted this player, but that was such a mistake. And as in 1990, I was 22 years old, 21 years old. I knew it, and I was not an executive. I knew it was a mistake. How could you not pass? How could you not draft Jagr? And I remember, and this is to Russ Farwell got a lot of grief in this town as being a horrible GM, and he was not. He was he was brought to a team that was just awful. They got rid of Tocchet, they got rid of Poole, and they got rid of Prop. They had nobody. They were an awful team. So, he almost had it, and he was the one that drafted. He didn't draft. He was drafted. His first draft was the Peter Forsberg draft, and people thought he was crazy. They thought Forsberg went too high. I believe Forsberg was drafted 6 overall the year Lindros was picked number 1. So they were drafted the same year. And people thought, who's this Forsberg, this skinny, underdeveloped Swedish player? Well, Farwell was spot on with him. And he was later replaced, but, I think he was given a bad rep. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was our little cute Flyer and Ice penalty box segment. We're gonna try to do something like that each and every week, where we bring up something from the past that we can chew on. That'll listen. We all have our memories as kids, as the good old days, the players that we love, the players that brought us to the sport. So we're gonna try to do that each and every week. Obviously, talk about the current times, but somehow tie in the past. So, real fast, I will share my DFS lineup, and then I believe we're 25 minutes to face off for a nice hockey game tonight. So again, DFS is just for the fun of it. Hockey, to me, as I've mentioned many times, is the hardest lineup to put together. I have fun with basketball. I love doing football, but hockey is tough. And you always want to build with the goalies. So I am just waiting for it to pull up on my screen. I'm pulling up a tab, and let's see what my lineup is. All right. So I went with a 3-team stack. I think all players are within 3 teams. I have Elias Peterson with Vancouver and Besser. I think I might have gone with these 2 guys the last show, but I really love Brock Besser. I went with second line players with the Lightning to save myself some money. I went Cirelli and I went Johnson. Johnson was put on. I'm not sure if you're familiar what's going on with him. He was put on the practice squad for them, or the I'm drawing a blank. What are they calling that?
Taxi squad.
Thank you. He was put on the taxi squad because they had to play around with salary cap implications, and they basically used him as a pawn. So his salary was rearranged, and now he's back on. They put him right on the second line. So I'm hoping he's going to come out flying, almost in a way, in anger for the games they were playing with him before they got him in the lineup. This will be a second game tonight. So I have Cirelli and Johnson. I have Josh Anderson, a power forward I love with Montreal, and I referenced him on the first show. They traded Montreal traded Ty Domi's son to get him. So Domi was traded for him and a draft pick. Anderson's been a gradual prolific goal scorer, 26 goals last year, 6'3", 225 power forward. So I'm having him going with Nick Suzuki tonight. And I have Quinn Hughes on defense, and I have Quinn Hughes on D, and I have Cale Makar of Colorado. So I think he's the only one that is outside of my stack. And I have Vasilevsky as the goalie for tonight. So that's my DraftKings lineup, and I'll put it on Twitter later tonight. Just do it for the fun of it, people. It's hockey's a tough one to do. I break even if I'm lucky in hockey, but it's all fun. It's just a hard lineup to put together in DFS, in my opinion. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed our show tonight. I want to apologize. It was my first time producing, and we'll laugh about this in the future. I hit the wrong buttons. I got into the wrong show initially. I hit play and I didn't upload our video montage to get it started. So I apologize. So, but on behalf of Vance, I want to wish everyone a good week, a good night, and I want you to enjoy the Flyers game tonight. And let's go Flyers. Let's go 4-1 and take down those Bruins. Good night, everyone, and thank you.